NASCAR is a fiercely competitive sport, with 40 different teams racing inches away from each other for hours on end. The competition doesn't stop with the drivers and teams though. There are competing sponsors in every single race. Coke versus Pepsi, Budweiser versus Miller, UPS versus FedEx, all happening week in and week out. I wanted to see who was on top in the sponsorship battles. Hi, my name is Matt, and this is Sponsor Battles, brought to you by Dogleg Media. In this series, we will look at sponsors in the same industry fielding cars at America's highest level of motorsports and how they stack up against each other on the track. Today we look at the Battle of the Beers, Anheuser-Busch versus Molson Coors. 4 different brands, each with varying histories in the Cup Series. This one is slated to be a good one. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay in the loop. I post history-themed NASCAR content every single week. But with that intro out of the way, let's dive into sponsor battles, the Battle of the Beers. Budweiser, with the slogan King of Beers, has had a fabled history in NASCAR. Before we dive into who brought them their success, let's take a look at their stats. Budweiser as a brand has 64 total wins with 8 different drivers. It's competed in 1,108 total races, and it's won 2 championships. Terry Labonte would first take Budweiser to victory lane in 1983. Driving the number 44 Hagen Racing Chevrolet, he would bring home his second career victory at Rockingham that season. Labonte would be Budweiser's driver in 1983, and then again from 1987 to 1989. His second stint would come driving for the legendary Junior Johnson. All in all, Labonte would win 5 times with Budweiser, putting him 4th all-time with the sponsor. Darrell Waltrip would gain support from Budweiser in 1984 after they would leave Labonte. He would have their support from 1984 until 1986, and in those 3 short years, he would win enough to put him 2nd all-time in wins with the sponsor. He would win an impressive 13 times with Budweiser on the car, and would also win the sponsor their first title in 1985. He wasn't with them for long, but that number 11 Budweiser car was first made famous by old DW. And Darrell wasn't the only Junior Johnson driver that Budweiser sponsored from 84 to 86. They would also sponsor Neil Bonnet during that time. Bonnet, while nowhere near as successful as his teammate Waltrip in that stretch, was no slouch either. He would win 3 times, with a best points finish of 4th in 1985. To think that Budweiser had 2 cars finish in the top 4 of points that season is a crazy feat of dominance. And wildly enough, these 3 wins by Bonnet are the fewest number of wins anyone has had with Budweiser, showing that the brand demands excellence. Next is Jeffrey Bodine, who would only be with the sponsor for 2 seasons, 1990 and 1991. This again would come with Junior Johnson's race team, and he would have his best season ever in 1990, finishing the season with 3 wins and placing 3rd in the final standings. After Bodine came the legend, Bill Elliott. Elliott would switch brands. After once making the Coors brand famous, he would switch to Anheuser-Busch with Junior Johnson in 1992. He came so close to winning his 2nd and the brand's 2nd title in 1992, finishing a mere 10 points behind eventual champion Alan Kulwicki. This championship battle is widely regarded as the best championship race in history. Heck, had Elliott led just 1 more lap in that race, he would have been the champion on a tiebreaker. Elliott would win 5 times in 92, including 4 in a row early in the season, before winning the final race of the season at Atlanta. Elliott would then go winless in 93, before getting his last win with the brand in 1994 at Darlington. There would be a slew of drivers from 95 to 98 with no luck of finding victory lane. But then in 1999, the brand would find their winningest driver, and the most synonymous with the Budweiser brand. Dale Earnhardt Jr. would begin his relationship with Bud in 1999, and from then until 2007, they created the longest and winningest relationship during their time in the sport. Jr. would win 17 times with Budweiser, the most of any driver with the St. Louis beer brand. He would then win the brand its only Daytona 500, which is honestly surprising given their history of incredible drivers. The ending of this relationship might just be the most painful in the sport's history, as when Junior would leave to Hendrick, Budweiser would throw their support behind another hot young prospect. And I just gotta say, this Bud's for you, Junior. We're gonna miss seeing you on NBC, but best of luck at Amazon. In 2008, Budweiser would sponsor Casey Kane, and in 3 years, they would share 4 points-paying wins together as well as an All-Star victory. The choice to go to Kane always confused me as a kid when it happened, but honestly looking back on it, it wasn't a bad move. Sure, Evernham and RPM weren't the best equipment in those years, but Kane made up for it with his talent. Winning twice in 08 and 09 and the All-Star race in 2008 should be considered a success. Kane would leave the team with 4 races remaining to jump over to Red Bull Racing, leaving Eric Almirola to pilot the Budweiser car for 4 races. Yeah, I didn't know Almirola made starts with Budweiser, and he came close to winning with them at Homestead that year, finishing 4th. And now we move to the final driver in the Budweiser brand's time in NASCAR, Kevin Harvick. This relationship was an extremely successful one, and it is still the longest relationship Anheuser-Busch as a company has ever had with a single driver. From 2011 until 2015, Harvick would sport the iconic Budweiser brand, driving it to 12 wins and bringing them their second and most recent championship in 2014. 7 of these wins would come with Richard Childress Racing from 2011 to 2013, with the remaining 5 coming with Stewart-Haas Racing. Harvick would bring back the iconic Budweiser brand for 1 race in his final season, running his championship winning scheme at Homestead in 2023 as a final send-off for the retiring driver. This was a fan favorite, and personally, it was my favorite scheme from the entire 2023 season. And that is the end of the Budweiser chapter in this one. Now let's move to the other Anheuser-Busch brand, Busch. The Busch brand earned Anheuser-Busch's first NASCAR win, but it has had a much shorter time in the Cup Series as a primary sponsor. Let's take a look at its stats. Busch brand has 25 total wins split between 2 different drivers. It's competed in 194 total races, and it's still looking for its first title. Busch brand would get its first win in 1979 at Richmond with NASCAR legend Cale Yarborough. This win and all his wins with the brand would come with Junior Johnson and Associates. He would have their support for 2 seasons, 1979 and 1980. In that time, he would rattle off 10 wins and would nearly win the brand a championship in 1980, finishing 19 points behind Dale Earnhardt for the title. Man, I love this paint scheme. It's honestly a top scheme of all time in my opinion, and I think it gets forgotten a lot of the time. Anheuser-Busch would then focus on the Budweiser brand until 2016, when they would then switch back to the Busch brand with Kevin Harvick. Happy Harvick would win 15 total times with the Busch brand, 5 of the wins coming with Busch and 10 with Busch Light. 3 of those 10 Busch Light wins would come with Busch Light Apple, and yes, I am still upset that it's gone. The peach just didn't do it, but there was something so crisp about a Busch Light Apple. I promise this video isn't sponsored by Busch Light Apple, but I am open to it. Hit me up, Anheuser-Busch. Harvick would spend 13 years with the company, split between the 2 brands, making the most of the relationship. There were definitely a couple of seasons I can think of where he should have given Busch that first title. Oh well, that's the system. Be sure to argue with me in the comments about how it's a terrible system. I'm prepared to defend it. Oh, and before I forget, Nino wanted me to mention this absolute abomination of a paint scheme, the Millennial Scheme. Now we talk about the current state of the relationship, and boy do I think it's in good hands. With Harvick retiring at the end of 2023, it was announced that Ross Chastain would be getting the keys to the Anheuser-Busch checkbook. Firstly, I love this scheme. It makes Busch Light look so cold and so refreshing. The 2 most important factors of a great beer in my opinion. Secondly, I think Chastain very well could bring the brand its first title. Chastain is an extremely talented driver and has shown the grit to do whatever it takes to win. Do I think it will be as long of a relationship as Harvick had? I don't know, but I do know that Chastain will make the most of his time with the brand. And finally, thirdly, there better be a Busch Light watermelon campaign. It just makes way too much sense. And that's it for Anheuser-Busch's portion of this video. Now let's look at the competitor, Molson Coors. We switch to the Molson Coors side of things, and we kick it off with the Miller brand. Yes, I know for the majority of Miller's success in NASCAR, they weren't a Molson brand. But with the company acquiring the brand in 2016, they acquire the success of the brand as well. It also just makes things nice and simple for the video. Let's take a look at the stats. The Miller brand has 78 total wins, split between 5 different drivers. It's competed in 724 total races, and it's won 2 championships. Alright, so the Miller brand was a bit complicated to research for, but alas, I did it. Most of the complication came from the fact that they have featured 5 different products in their time in the sport. So, with that, I will cover all 5 and the drivers to win with them, starting with the brand that got their time started in the sport, Miller High Life. Bobby Allison would get the brand their first win in 1983 at Richmond. The Alabama gang member would win 9 times with the High Life branding, including Molson Coors' first championship in 1983. Allison would have a relationship with High Life from 1983 until 1988. He is still the only driver to win with the High Life product on the car, although a few others have ran under that banner. Next we go to a more obscure placement. They would win 3 races with the branding of Miller American. While this was just a High Life product, I thought I would make the distinction for this video. Bobby Allison would win 2 times with this campaign, once in 1986 at Talladega and once in 1987 at Daytona. And Bobby Hillin Jr. would grab his lone career win with the Miller American branding, driving a number 8 car to victory in 1986 at Talladega. It's pretty cool that the same brand with different drivers would sweep the 1986 Dega races. And now we talk about when the brand would simply run under the Miller brand. Running under this brand name, they would win 5 races, all with Rusty Wallace in 1996. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this scheme. It is one of the coolest schemes out there, and it screams the 90s. This is a short segment in the Miller story, but it's a successful one no less. And on to the next product, and it's the second winningest in the brand's portfolio. Miller Genuine Draft, one of my personal favorite beers, has a total of 26 wins, with one driver having 25 of those. Rusty Wallace would first win in the Genuine Draft scheme in 1990 at Charlotte for the Coke 600. He would rack up 25 wins from 1990 until 1995, and would come oh so close to a title in 1993. It was a year where he would win a season best 10 races, and would finish second to Dale Earnhardt by 80 points. The only other driver to win with the Genuine Draft brand would be Brad Keselowski. He would only ever run this product 3 times, but would win in its last appearance, winning the Southern 500 in 2018. This might just be the coolest throwback to ever win the Southern 500 since they started doing the throwback schemes. Man, I loved seeing this thing in Victory Lane, and as a Genuine Draft lover, I certainly threw a couple back that night. And finally, we discussed the final product to win under the Miller brand, Miller Lite. A recent favorite for sure. Rusty Wallace would first win with it in 1997 at Richmond. He would run with the Miller Lite sponsorship from 1997 until his retirement in 2005. He would win 9 times in that stretch, becoming the winningest driver in Molson Coors history with 39 total wins, stretching across 3 different brands. After Rusty would retire, Kurt Busch would take over the Blue Deuce. He would run it from 2006 until 2010, finding victory lanes 7 times with Miller Lite as the primary. And I can hear everyone now, but Matt, Kurt Busch won 8 times with Miller Lite. To that I say, check out the 2009 Texas win. Miller Lite was listed as the secondary sponsor, with Operation Homefront on the hood and listed as the primary. I have to keep it uniform to provide some sense of consistency in this series. Still though, 7 wins in 5 seasons, it's a good run. And finally there is Brad Keselowski, the winningest driver for the Miller Lite brand. Brad would take over the Blue Deuce in 2011 and put on one heck of a show for the next 10 seasons with it. He would win 19 times under the Miller Lite banner and would win the Miller brand as a whole their second championship, winning the title in 2012. He had some incredible paint schemes over the years too. Heck, even the simple white scheme they ran at the end was so nice. There was no better Miller Lite scheme though than the last to ever run and win, the patriotic scheme at the 2020 Coke 600. My man Jimmy was battling with Brad on the last restart, but Brad prevailed to win. Heck, even if Jimmy had won, he was later DQ'd, so that would have hurt. Throw in Brad's win tradition of flying the American flag, and it made for a perfect Memorial Day weekend. And I thought I should mention, Penske's relationship with Molson Coors is still technically there, with Keystone Light. While it has never won, it still runs a race or two with Austin Cindric. I would love to see Miller come back though. They always had great schemes, and they seem like a perfect sponsor. Now let's wrap this video up with the final brand to be featured, the Coors brand. Finishing this one up is Coors. They have won with 2 different products, and we will detail them here. Let's look at the stats for the Coors and Molson Coors. The Coors brand has 39 total wins, split between 4 different drivers. It's competed in 658 total races, and it has 1 championship. And as we stated, they would win with 2 separate brandings, Coors and Coors Light. We start with Coors, as it is their heavy hitter, but only ever had 1 winner. Yeah, the Coors brand was carried by Awesome Bill from Dawsonville, Bill Elliott. He would get the brand its first win in 1984 at Michigan. This would be the first of 32 wins, the most by any driver in the beer battles for a single brand. He would have an 8-year-long relationship with Coors from 1984 until 1991, all coming with Melling Racing. Elliott claimed the brand its only championship in 1988 and also won 2 Daytona 500s with them. We discussed earlier how Elliott would jump ship from Coors to be the Budweiser driver in 1992. And man, that must have been tough for some hardcore Elliott fans who grew accustomed to the taste of Coors. And this is basically the end of the Coors brand because they would focus their efforts on their other brand, Coors Light. And wouldn't you know it, $1 Million Bill would also win the first race under the Coors Light banner era as well. He would win the 1991 Daytona Summer Race with the light variant on the car. And while it's no silver bullet, I love this scheme. Coors would then be absent from the sport for 1992, 1993, and most of 1994, with Mike McLaughlin running 2 races in 94 before coming back in 1995 full-time. They would throw their support behind Kyle Petty for 2 seasons in 1995 and 1996. Petty would grab 1 win with the brand. In 1995 at Dover, this would be his final Cup Series win. And his paint scheme definitely screams 90s, and I honestly like it. The driver who would technically make the Coors brand first start ever way back in 1981 would come back in 1998, Sterling Marlin. This initial paint scheme was an eyesore, and it would be that way until 2001. But in 2001, we would receive maybe the greatest beer paint scheme ever, the iconic Silver Bullet. Silver base paint, the Coors orange-red is the number font, and the mountains on the side. It would be with this paint scheme that Sterling Marlin would break through to get his first win with the brand, at Michigan. Sterling would be with the Coors Light brand from 1998 until 2005. During this time, he would win 4 races, but man, this paint scheme deserved so much more. And the final win for the Coors Light brand would come with a driver who was never supposed to be in the seat, and only ever made 5 starts with the brand. Jamie McMurray would fill in for an injured Marlin at the end of the 2002 season. He would score his first and the brand's last win at Charlotte in the fall of 2002 in just his 2nd start. Yeah, this was not supposed to happen and is still one of the biggest upset wins in the sport's history. And I will touch on the last race for the brand as it was a forgotten memory of mine. Regan Smith would run with Coors Light on his DEI 01 car in 2008. I'm not a fan of this scheme, but it is Coors Light, and that's cool, so I thought I should share it here. And that's it for the Battle of the Beers. Now let's take a look at the final stats and see who is the winner of this sponsor battle. Alright, so here are the final results. This was a much closer battle compared to the home improvement stores, but it does appear that there is a clear winner. Anheuser-Busch ends with 89 total wins, 10 unique winners, and 2 championships in 1,302 races. Molson Coors comes in with 117 total wins, 9 unique winners, 3 championships in 1,382 races. So, at this time, I feel confident calling this battle in favor of Molson Coors. It wasn't a knockout like Lowe's laid down on the competition last time. This one certainly came down to a split decision. The good news for Anheuser-Busch fans is that they are still actively racing today with a championship caliber driver in Ross Chastain. Do I think Ross completely erases that 28 race win gap? Probably not. But do I think he can even the battle in championships? Absolutely I do. This was a wildly fun battle to call, and congratulations to our winner Molson Coors. And here are some interesting things to note. Only one driver contributed to both teams, with Bill Elliott winning for Budweiser and Coors. Molson was led in wins by Rusty Wallace at 39, and they were bolstered in championships by Bill Elliott, Bobby Allison, and Brad Keselowski. Anheuser-Busch was led in wins by Kevin Harvick with 27. They received championships from Darrell Waltrip and Kevin Harvick. And that's it. Let's wrap this thing up. And that'll do it for the Battle of the Beers. Man, this was a ton of fun, and I can't wait for the next one. As always, I'm prone to forgetting drivers and moments. Let me know anything I may have missed for this one down below. Be sure to vote in the poll on the community tab of the channel to determine the next sponsor battle. And if you liked the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. It helps a ton, and I definitely appreciate it. And did you know that 71% of my viewers aren't subscribed, but they are returning viewers? If you keep coming back and watching, but you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you waiting for? As always, I want to thank the Dogleg team for all of their incredible work. Darksea, Dice, Christian, Elite, Jafer, and The Gamer, y'all help make the channel and community a better place. And we also have a Discord server. Find the invite in the About section of the channel or in the description below. We share our silly season picks, merch collections, race reaction, exclusive contests, and so much more over there. Come join us. But that'll do it for us here at Dogleg Media. I'm Matt, your host, and you've been watching NASCAR Sponsor Battles. I'll see you next time.